Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Time and Change Will Surely show, where Juck and I am Tony Gerdeman, along with Juck Milletti, take a look at Ohio State history, Ohio State present, and Ohio State future, focused on one topic at a time. And we just explore the room on that topic. Today, we're talking about everybody's favorite thing, which is recruiting. And this is recruiting predates the internet era and will also probably, I don't know if it'll post date the internet era, but it's been around forever. And even though there are changes, there will always be recruiting. And so, as we do on this show, I like to set a baseline. So, when did you start following recruiting, and what were some of those early ones that you remember?
Well, I remember just a few from probably, I don't know, from the time I was 10 to 15. I remember Mike Vrabel because there's a lot of people around the area that were worried he might go to Michigan. He went up to a Michigan camp. And I was a ball boy at Walsh. So that was like a big thing. And Mike Vrabel obviously was before I ever, could find a star ranking or anything like that. But he, without a doubt, would be a 5 star. No doubt about that in today's day and age. So that was big time fodder around here, as was Derek Warnke, who ended up
Oh,
going to Ohio State. But there weren't many. I can probably count on from the time I was 10 to 15, probably just 5 or 6 that were ones that were really um, ones that stood out to me. It wasn't until probably the early 2000s that I really started getting into, some recruiting big time.
yeah, and the internet era starts. 2002 is when Rivals and Scout at that time started to really. That's basically all the further you can go back. There are
Yeah.
times though where I will, what the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine, I will go and type in some old, type in the ozone in there, and I'll go back to like 1998, 1997, when John Perennis would have Bill Kurelic do his recruiting updates. So it's like, on this date, let's see what was happening with Chris Sims and Ohio State on this date in 1999 or whatever, and you can just it's a blast from the past when they're talking to all of these players. Like you go to like
Yeah.
2005 or whatever, and it's like Prescott Burgess liked his visit to Ohio State. I wonder how that's gonna turn out. So
He's
every now
on
and
my
again,
list to talk about today, Tony. That one burned me bad, bud.
so yeah, I wanted to. It's funny because I wanted to talk about some big time wins and losses, and yet like all I wrote down is losses, and it's exactly like the Tom and I just did a Buckeye Weekly episode, listener question episode, and the question was basically why does it seem like Ohio State always loses the big time recruits? And I'm like, you're that's not true. You've lost perspective. They win plenty. They get look at Jeremiah Smith. Look at all these guys they've got. And then it's like when I'm jotting down all of these things that I remember, it's just it's just a litany of losses. And well, that guy got away. Buster Davis, Kajana Carter, Eric Shelton. Like these are 20, 25, 30 years ago. But yes, they have won some. But I did also ask on Twitter for some people, and I think the number one guy in terms of biggest hurtful losses was Micah Parsons, which was an ESPN game day situation
It was
where
just such an error.
it's just an error on a bunch of people's parts, and they
Yeah.
missed out on him. So that was like one that sticks out. But you know, give us a good one. Give us something that a win that you have jotted down. That way, we can start to show off on a good note.
Well, here, I mean, not too long back, but the Riley Pettijohn win
Ooh,
I thought was amazing because there wasn't much noise with Ohio State and Riley Pettijohn throughout the entire 2025 cycle. It was like he was always out there on the periphery, that Ohio State was recruiting him, but they had just signed his buddy who was at Skyline in Texas, another 5 star running back in Texas. And it looked like he was going to stay home. And then things start heating up between the Buckeyes and Pettijohn, and all of a sudden, here comes USC entering into the picture. And it was right at the time where USC was starting to get big with the money. And his mom had said something about something about the coach out there, And that whatever comment that was, people took to mean like, oh, he's getting a big bag from USC. And it just never looked like, until he committed, like Ohio State was going to win that one. And then bam, they win. And it's like, oh my gosh, we need to go watch some film, because honestly, I hadn't even really been checking up on him a ton, because it felt so far fetched that they were going to land this kid out of Texas. And that one was just like a huge win to me. Like, oh, you got to be kidding me. This is amazing. And pairing him with TJ Alford, it was just like, this is awesome.
It was a nice coup getting those two guys, one from Texas, one from Florida. And then you get the Ohio middle linebacker and Eli Lee as well. I mean, the Jeremiah Smith is one that everybody remembers in terms of watching it. Like watching, it's one thing to see a commitment live on TV or whatever, but it's another to see the head coach get the word live that
Something, right?
the letter of intent is in and he's good. And you saw Ryan Day, fake like he's going to faint, but I guarantee you his blood pressure was changing. His knee ligaments were a little bit looser, and he got that news. And I think that was the same day they were still waiting on Edric Houston as well. And that was
Yes, and
still.
he had a similar reaction.
Mm-hmm.
But you can look back, Tony. It's a great moment. I mean, it's a Buckeye history moment, because we can look back right now. That guy knew, right? He knew what most people didn't know in that moment. He knew what he would be when he walked in. He already knew, and that was a real moment right there. And people made fun of him, national folks, about his over dramatic reaction. No, that was a real flipping moment, and we can look back and point to it now, and we'll talk about it 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dan Lanning would have jumped into 17 different pools if they would have gotten that signature. I do remember Baron Browning in the 2017 class. Mm-hmm. Urban Meyer was telling the story on signing day that Baron called him up and said, "I'm committing to Alabama. I'm sorry." And Urban took his phone and he just threw it up against the wall and smashed it. And then the phone rang a couple minutes later, and it's Baron Browning's dad calling Urban saying, "Hey, congrats, coach. You got a good one." He's like, "What are you talking about? He's going to Alabama." And he's like, "No, I think Baron's just pulling a prank on you." And so then that's how Urban found out that, Baron Browning is actually signing with us. And then 3.5 years later, they finally started to use him correctly. And you got 7 good games out of him. But there's always fun stories like that. There's a couple that got away. Here's a sneaky one. Tell me if this would have impacted the Buckeyes last year. Blake Miller going to Clemson. If Ohio State has him as a senior right tackle last year, do you think they do better? Do you think they can handle a little bit more of the Indiana and the specific, and also the Miami pressure? Do you think he changes things at all? I'm not saying does he change the game, but does something like that where his name was mentioned a couple of times. I thought that was a sneaky good pick.
I agree. I don't know if they could have handled the elite movement of Purdue and Wisconsin, but maybe Miami and Indiana, if they had Blake Miller. But no, seriously, yeah, I think that definitely would have been a big deal, because when you look at a guard that is having such a bad season, like Tegra had last year, when you put a guy like that in between a really good center and a really good tackle that are both very experienced, his play goes up exponentially. And that's just fact. So pairing Phil Daniels, who's getting his feet wet, next to Tegra, just made the whole side of that line much weaker, and I don't think it helped Tegra at all. But yeah, put Blake next to him, definitely that's a much better line.
Another one that has always here's my most painful. I think this is my most painful growing up loss that I saw Ohio State suffer, and that's Michael Bush, quarterback from Louisville, went to Louisville. And if they would have been able to sign him, he would have been there as a running back in 2003 when they did not have a running back in 2003. And I think he would have been just fine and more than fine. He was a playmaker. He's very, very good at Louisville. Another guy that went to Louisville, I can give you a bunch that went to Louisville, like Eric Shelton, another running back from Lexington in 2001, went to Florida State and then transferred to Louisville. If they have him, in 2001, 2002, 2003. I don't think that keeps Maurice Claret from going there, but that's another one. You could throw in James Quick with like 2007. I don't even know
That one
anymore.
stung, man. I wanted him bad. Michael Bush. Now, didn't Petrino try to like bribe him by saying he was going to make him a quarterback or give him an opportunity to play quarterback to get him there?
Yeah, and he was a dynamic quarterback, and then he played a little bit of quarterback, but they also had Brian Brom. So
Right.
do that math.
But he was going to transfer to Ohio State at one point, wasn't he? Like he was thinking about it.
There are probably all kinds of rumors at that point, but man,
He was a stud.
you know what? Maybe he plays quarterback instead of Troy Smith.
Speaking of Troy Smith in the Buster Davis recruitment, that's the Troy Smith scholarship recruitment, right? Buster Davis doesn't come to Ohio State. Troy Smith ends up getting that scholarship. It was the final one in the class, and the rest is history. So Buster Davis did us a big favor.
Boy, that's very good because he was mentioned as a painful loss, and sometimes the ones you lose, it works out okay. But that's one that has stuck around forever. Everybody wanted him, and they don't get him. And so what do you get instead? You get a Heisman Trophy winner, and it's like I wonder what guy they missed out on that allowed them to get Kenny Guyton at the end of the 2009 class. And sometimes things work out. I'm just looking through this list. Kajana Carter in 1992 went to Penn State. There were rumors that the Arizona Cardinals, maybe the Phoenix Cardinals at that point, were looking at John Cooper. And I think those rumors were probably put out by Joe Paterno because Kajana Carter was a Westerville football player and he ends up going to Penn State. And that would have been, pair him for, he runs the show for a couple of years with Raymont Harris, and then they hand the keys over to Eddie George. That would have been fun to watch because he's still one of the best college football running backs I ever saw, Kajana Carter. I don't know if you remember him at all watching him.
I remember it. I remember it at Penn State. I don't remember the recruitment or him in high school. I was probably 10 or 11.
But do you think Bijan Robinson, the 2020 class, commits to Ohio State? Then, you've got his grandma's like, yeah, I'd rather you stay closer to home. And so then he flips to Texas. Yeah. And I've had some people say, well, if they get Bijan Robinson, then they don't get Travion Henderson, and they needed Travion Henderson in 2024. And I still think you can still land Travion Henderson if you've got Bijan Robinson, because Henderson came in with Evan Pryor, like sharing carries was never going to be an issue with him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He was all for Quinshon Judkins coming in. I don't know, 2022, the running backs are banged up. If they have Bijan Robinson, junior Bijan Robinson in 2022, is there a better offense?
A big difference. Yeah, absolutely. This is almost this thing where we've gone about this, and I feel like the NFL mindset has kind of creeped in, but it's coming back. Like the thought that all backs were interchangeable. Just kind of started to creep into college football and even into the fan mindset. I think we forgot, no, some of these dudes are just different and they totally change your flipping offense. And now that we're all back on board, acknowledging this, then we get a recruitment like a DGG and everybody's all amped up. But yeah, man, these guys can change your offense. And Bijan certainly was a guy who could have done that in a year where you got a walk-on wide receiver carrying the football. You're so dinged up.
Boy, yeah, and you're dealing with, you got a former walk-on wide receiver, you've got a transfer linebacker in 2023 carrying the ball and Chip Trainum. Dallin Hayden is carrying the ball as a true freshman at that time and can't really get on the field after that because once they stopped being so banged up, I guess it wasn't as much of an issue. But man, it would have been fun to watch. There's a long list of running backs that were almost Buckeyes that it would have been fun to watch. I think Ohio State's been pretty fortunate over the years to have the running backs that they do, but it's fun to imagine some of the guys that they could have had that they didn't. One of my favorites all time that I guess didn't have the grades, but Javon Ringer from Dayton, I think, went to Michigan State, and Mark D'Antonio ran him like 390 times in a season and shredded his knees. But that dude was fun to watch. There's been a bunch of others like Tyrell Sutton, who was in the same class as Beanie Wells, went to Northwestern and It wasn't
He
the
was so
fastest
good,
guy,
dude.
but he was just fun to watch.
Made it to the NFL as such a he's a small guy. I mean,
Mm.
his dad was enormous. He was an Akron cop, like a legendary Akron cop bodybuilder. He was just like a house. But the Sutton boys were beasts up here in Akron, man. And Terrelle was the beastiest of them. The big losses from Warren killed me early on. Like you
Mm.
brought up Prescott Burgess and Sean Crable in that 2003 class. And then Mario Manningham a couple of years later. Was he with it was the three of them. One of them was a couple of years later. I think Manningham was a couple of years later out of Warren Harding. And now his son, Mario Manningham Jr., is at Akron Hoban, and he's got a Michigan offer after just finishing his freshman year. He hasn't done anything yet. We'll see what he turns into. But boy, when they get those big wins in bunches, man, it's demoralizing to me. I hate it so much. But those guys that they stung a lot for me. Those wins right there really stung. Recent ones that I think stung everybody. Obviously, the David Sanders loss was just a huge, massively magnified, outsized, much more than it should have been, in my opinion, loss. The Justin Hill loss to Alabama was a pretty big one. The Naeem Offord signing day flip after being in the class with Devin Sanchez the whole time was a big, nasty loss. The biggest win, I think the biggest win I've ever loved of my life was the Terrelle Pryor win. The way that thing went down, the way it drug out, the cancellation, like that one right there was just, I felt like we won a national championship that day.
You'll still hear the horror stories and the angry stories from the Ohio State media that went to cover that. And then
I bet, man.
You drive all the way out to Jeanette, Pennsylvania. And then he's like, I'm not committing today. And you're like,
this little.
So that, I guess that was the first instance, Terrelle was right. He runs this stuff, and he ran that one, and then he ran everybody back home. That one was, I don't know if there's ever been another one like that. First, it went well past signing day. So did JT Tuimoloau, which is another big one. But the fates of, like, imagine Michigan with Rich Rodriguez getting Terrelle Pryor. I think things would have been much different. That he was the perfect quarterback for that system.
Perfect. It would have been something to watch.
He's like a 6'6" Pat White. They just didn't have a Steve Slayton,
Yeah.
But that one was a fun one. My recollection of the Prescott Burgess thing, because at the time he was rated as a 5-star safety, but he was already like 6'3", 220. Ohio State told him, you're going to be a linebacker. Lloyd Carr said, we're going to let you play safety. And then as soon as he arrived, they put him at linebacker and said, welcome to Ann Arbor. And that's, there's some stories like that one. Other people mentioned Sharif Floyd, defensive tackle that committed and signed with Florida after, Urban Meyer said he had like a spiritual dream about him. At least that was the report back then. Like there's so many stories. One day there'll be more told about the Legend Bay situation, but don't sleep on that win. I know there's some very excited people around the program having him in this building.
Tony, how about waiting on Marquise Lightfoot out of Chicago, waiting on his decision, all Buckeye lean, and then you get the surprise, Justin Scott, defensive tackle, 5-star commitment, right, to Ohio State, waiting at, now you're thinking you're going to get them both, and then you end up losing Lightfoot, he commits to Miami, and then Scott flips to Miami. That was like an all-timer, like, oh my God, this class was looking amazing in my head, and now we're scratching and clawing on signing day for one guy in Edric Houston. Like it turned into nothing.
That feels like that was the beginning of the end for Larry Johnson, except things are just fine. Here's one. Let's see if you remember it. When the Buckeyes lost Meg.
No.
Okay. This is during the Kyle Dotson commitment. So this has been, I don't know, the class of 2012 maybe, but at his school, they had all of their kids, all of the athletes committing and, field hockey and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a girl named Meg who, was choosing between like Ohio State and Stanford, and she chose Stanford. But it was just like the longest thing. You're there to watch. We're on YouTube or whatever it was at that point, watching for Kyle Dotson, and you got to watch all of these kids. And then Meg essentially becomes like an internet legend because she's taking her time, and people are like, "Get her off the stage. We're just here to see Kyle
I've got to
Dotson."
see this, Tony. I've got to look this
So,
up.
hopefully, it's still out there. But those are some. You have anything else written down that you wanted to touch on? I will say this: one of my earliest memories, that I remember that I went and watched, was Orlando Pace, who we got to see play basketball at Sandusky. His team was playing in the playoffs, and they were in Bowling Green, so that was like a 30-minute drive for us. So we went and watched him drop step on like a 5-star freshman and dunk it, and we're like, this is going to be fun to watch when he's playing left tackle for the Buckeyes. But that was a big one. Andy Katzenmoyer, he was a known recruit at that time. So just throwing some names out there from the 90s for us.
One more big painful period for me, Tone. Losing back-to-back number one player in Ohio, linebacker Jordan Hicks to Texas, Trey DePriest to Alabama. That's made me just absolutely furious, man. Furious. But while Hicks was good and had a long NFL career, DePriest, he was all right. But nah, man, that was a stinger right there, man. 2 5-stars in state. Now it's boy, it doesn't even seem to phase me anymore because the players are just so much more different. I was looking through, Tony, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. Ohio State with 5 out of the top 20 prospects in Ohio, Georgia with 2 of the top 20 in Georgia, Alabama with 1 or 2 of the top 20 in Alabama, all blue chippers. I mean, it's just that's what it is now. And Ohio State is still doing better than their competitors with in-state talent. But it's like if these guys want to put themselves and say, all right, no, I'm on even footing with everybody, then that's how the local school is going to treat them.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to give Ohio State the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, yeah, there is going to be a little hometown discount, like they're going to prioritize you. But if you want to treat them like they're anybody else, well, you're going on the board like anybody else. And that's the way it's going to be. And I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different world now. And if we're done talking about the past, we can go ahead and transition into the present, because that's basically what we're talking about here. And
yeah,
the idea that it has become more of a business. And so if the recruits are going to treat it as such, then the schools have to do it. It's just like talking with Brady Edmunds, Ohio State's currently committed quarterback for the time being, saying that this is a business. He understands the school has to operate as a business. He does as well. And now, like, it doesn't matter what state you're in. We've seen Ohio State struggle in state with the secondary over the last few years. And the idea of the hometown, the homeschool discount, Alabama used to do it. Georgia's still able to do it. But you're seeing, like you said, if kids were more interested in that hometown discount, there'd be more Georgia players committed to Georgia. And so it'll be interesting to see how you go about not fixing it, but adjusting. And you still want to, like, Ohio State's always going to build from within. You want a nice baseline of Ohio kids, and they've done that on the offensive line. And you'll do that with the skill players that want to play for you. But man, it's until they get the agent situation settled, then it's hard to get the recruiting situation settled almost.
Yeah, no doubt. It's just, it's a different mentality, and we've seen it coming for a couple of years. I mean, number one, you got these guys; they've all grown up watching. Everybody puts out their top 10, and this is what they do. So they're looking at this, and they're all right. That's what we do. And there's just not that same kind of natural, like, yeah, it's Ohio State, and then I work out from there for in-state guys, which is what the mindset always was. If I can get the big time offers, if I'm getting Ohio State, it's that's where I'm working out from. If somebody pulls me out, that's one thing. Now it's like, no, the slate is totally even. Everything's totally open. We're starting off with deals. We've got priorities. We've got to make money. I get it. It's just a different feel. And somebody was asking me, like, doesn't Ohio State need to lock the state down? And I'm like, I'm sitting here looking, for instance, at cornerback, like we talk about, you know, looking at the last couple of classes at cornerback. You got the number one cornerback in 2025 and followed it up with the number one quarterback in corner in 2026 with Devin Sanchez and Jay Timmons. Your kicker in 2026, not kicker,
Yeah.
your second guy, Jordan Thomas. I think when you add Jay Timmons and Jordan Thomas together, it's significantly more desirable than the duo of Albert Hill and Vic Singleton, who were your in-state guys that defected to USC and Texas A&M. And if the fact that those guys didn't want to give you a hometown discount, Tim Walton expanded the board and got the guys that he wanted, and we ended up with better football players. So, there's also like this can work out in our favor as well.
Yeah, and you're Ohio State, so you're going to be able to do more than most. And you also have, because you're Ohio State, you've got kids from all over the country that have grown up wanting to play for you. Or when I say grown up, the last 3 years, they've watched,
right.
since they've been focused or thinking about it, they want to play for Ohio State, and it's been interesting to watch. Now, in terms of the 2027 class, I think Brady Edmunds said he's going to give it a couple of weeks. He came off of his Ohio State visit. He'll do his thinking about UCLA and Ohio State. And at this point, if Ohio State doesn't land him, then I think because if they don't land him, he's going to flip to UCLA and he'll still be committed somewhere. I think there's like one uncommitted quarterback in a 24/7 composite in the top like 40 quarterbacks. And so it's like you're going to have to flip somebody, which they would try to do. I maybe just go all in on Trey Taylor, but that guy seems like he has no interest in leaving Nebraska.
None whatsoever. You've seen the dad kind of throw out these feelers, but it almost feels to me like it's more directed at Nebraska than Ohio State. And when we look at like the situation of potentially getting another, and no disrespect to Luke Fahey, I like him. You like him. The kid can throw the ball, but he does not look like a future Ohio State starter to me. If you end up back-to-back classes with a guy of that caliber and you passed on Brady Edmunds because you just, the way you conducted yourself, it's going to look like a pretty big whiff to me, Tone.
Yeah, and that's, I think, another reason why. What's the harm in signing Brady Edmunds? But the thing is, you can't approach it as what's the harm. You've got to approach it like, we want this guy. He can be a starter at Ohio State. Like, you can't be like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll take you. We'll send the paperwork, I guess. That's not the response that he's looking for, and certainly not the attitude he's getting from UCLA. And I'm not saying that's the attitude he's getting from Ohio State. I'm just saying that's the attitude you can't give him if you are looking to sign a quarterback, because man, he threw it just fine. And if he doesn't ever start at Ohio State, he won't be the only one. Joe Burrow never started at Ohio State. There are plenty of quarterbacks who have never started at Ohio State and can start elsewhere or begin one place, end up another. It's like, the hit rate.
I'll also say this, Tone.
Yeah.
Let's say, for instance, you do end up with a Luke Fahey and another guy of that caliber, coming in 2 straight years. Then it looks like you're most likely, after, let's say Tavian St. Clair works out. After that, you're possibly looking at bringing in a transfer starter. And like, this doesn't bother me at all anymore. It used to. Like, I wanted to keep it in-house, develop, do the classic route. But when you win a national championship with Will Howard and you look at guys like Carson Beck beating your team, it's like, okay, there really is something to this. And I'm watching other schools work that process and things work out just fine for them. So at that particular position, I don't really mind if you don't nail it at the position in recruiting. I really don't. Now, if you get somebody special, like a Trey Taylor, like that's awesome. Or you get a Tavian St. Clair, that's awesome. But if you don't, I'm not too awfully concerned about it either. So I really can't get too irritated about it in any route. But I will say that coming into that official visit with Brady Edmunds, I thought that things would be smoothed over and he'd come out of that reaffirming his commitment, shutting everything down immediately.
Mhm.
I honestly, like, I was planning on doing a video on it Sunday, and I talked to him and he's like, yeah, we'll see what happens here in the next couple of weeks. I'm like, oh shit. I wasn't expecting that at all. And then he tweeted something today. It was him on a treadmill, and there's a song playing, and the song title, the lyrics are like, "I'm staying in LA. I can't leave out of LA." And I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing here?" He's like, "Why are people making a big deal out of this? Like, are you serious?" I
Well,
wouldn't be surprised if he's having a little fun, and he deserves it because
mhm.
he was a perfect recruit, and Ohio State was not so perfect to him publicly. So, all right, now he's going to act like a regular recruit. I get it, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he ends up at UCLA in 2 weeks.
I wouldn't either. And, because it is interesting when I asked him last week, so if he had some questions that he wanted answered. So I said, if you get the questions that you get the answers that you're looking for, do you expect this process to move quickly? He said, yeah. Now his quickly and your quickly may be different. It's what's 2 weeks. It's still early July. What's the big deal? That sort of thing. But yeah, like we've recorded a video, and it's like, well, I guess we'll record another one, because by the time this happens, who knows what we've said in a previous video that is now completely dated. References that don't make sense, or somebody's committed since then that we don't acknowledge. But it is still just June or July. Speaking of July 22nd, David Gabriel-George is expected to announce his commitment at that time. Here's my opinion on this. Everybody wants him. I don't think he's a need. Like, I don't think he's a want. I don't think if you lose him, then it's a disaster. I don't think that at all, because I think they like what they've got. I know they like Elijah Newman Hall in 2028. They'll be okay. Now, they still want him very, very badly. I just don't think this would be a complete disaster if they don't get him, other than the fact that they have expended so many resources in trying to get him and told other players no, because they're all in on getting him. If they don't get him, I don't think it's the end of the world. If they do get him, I'm not saying it's a guaranteed national championship. I'm just saying if they don't, they'll be okay. They'll still have players that can run the ball.
I think that this is almost 100% an upside play.
Yeah.
It's not if this doesn't happen, there are ramifications. Though I do think there are some ramifications.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, if you take on Ohio State and you go hard, you will beat them every time. Like, it almost looks like that to a certain extent. If we're going to go head to head with somebody, make it Ohio State, because when it's time to push all the chips in, we will win. And if you're one of those schools, you can go get them or go after them. But when it comes to the running back position, it's also another position where, like, I'm never really going to be worried about it, because in addition to the guys that are currently in the system, you can go out and get an Ahmad Hardy or a Kiwan Lacey. These guys were ranked 10th and 17th in the transfer portal, and they're the best backs in football. Or you can get a guy, pay up a little more for a Justice Haynes or a Hollywood Smothers, who is going to come in and be good. Like, if you need to do that, you can go do that. But it does look ridiculous. And I'm not going to just not address the fact that you look ridiculous if you go in on two entire classes for one guy and then pretend like, oh, we didn't know in the end it was going to cost this much. Like, that looks ridiculous. It looks very foolish. But no, I don't think there's some big detriment to losing it at all. It's all an upside play. It's all like, I think this guy can take our team from potentially contender to maybe that next level. And that's why it's worth it, not because we're trying to save our butt from going backwards. So I'm with you on that 100%.
If there are some appearance issues in terms of it would look bad, is it okay to spend more so that you can save yourself that appearance and maybe let others know that? Because you're right, it does feel like if it's one-on-one, anybody can just throw anybody. Most programs, if they're just focused on this one person, can outbid Ohio State. So is there some value in saying no, you can't, and maybe it's a little bit more or quite a bit more expensive than you wanted it to be?
I mean, listen, maybe some of this is pride talking, but I think so. I mean, I don't feel like it's like a bully. You can't just let yourself get picked on, right? Like there is something to that. And when it comes to business, right? And we are now talking business
Mm-hmm.
here. There is definitely something to that. Yeah.
Where it's just like I'm not I'm not going to allow this. I don't care what it
Hmm.
takes. It's not like these are public numbers because the families aren't going to necessarily say it. You'll have some speculation, but at some point, does enough become enough, and how worth it is it for you to have that? And you've got there's always concerns about locker room issues. The locker room already knows about David Gabriel-George. They know that he's coming. Assuming he's coming, they know all about him, and they know that he's going to challenge them for carry. So like this is again, it's not just a business for some people, some players. It's a business for all of the players, and the money is there if you make the right progression and you make the plays. It's going to be there for you, and all you have to do is just be better than the other guys, and that's work, that's talent, that's all of that sort of thing. And if some freshman comes in and makes you feel bad, there's the portal, I guess. It's a business. You can go find greener pastures, and I'm not saying they're going to push anybody out, but that's just how it is nowadays. You should just be quarterback. Now it's kind of like that at every position.
Right. And I mean, we've talked about how they've treated him like in the way they've acted like a Jeremiah level
Mhm.
prospect. And they clearly made exceptions to the way they operated financially with Jeremiah. And their backing of that was when he walks into the building, they'll all understand. And if they had an issue before, they will no longer have an issue because he'll outwork them,
Mhm.
he'll outlift them. And like everything we've heard about David Gabriel-George is from that angle, he's a clone of Jeremiah. I mean, his numbers bear that out
Yeah.
alone, his gym numbers. Like, yeah, this dude's working his butt off. Like you can tell by his 600-pound squat and 400-pound bench press at 17 years old. He's gonna come in and be just like Jeremiah from that perspective. He's going to be an Iron Buckeye, going to do all that stuff, and everybody's going to understand in the backfield and in every position group. Okay, we got another one, right? Yeah, we're not going to question what he's making or worry about what his pockets are. Like that's not what it's going to be for him, and they know that. And we've heard, because there's a lot of people that still are of the ilk that they don't want to hear, well, a freshman making a whole lot of money, and it's just like they always put the caveat here, except for Jeremiah. Well,
Mhm.
the way Ohio State's treated him is like another Jeremiah. So for him, I think that argument is kind of out the window.
Yeah, they may have done something similar with Chris Henry as well, where you are now in a battle, and so you've got to go win it, or you better be happy with the class that you've got. Um, and if they can find somebody if they don't get DGG, but if they do get them, there's going to be some celebrating and some appreciation for like Locke is going to be like, thank you people for allowing me to go and thank you for finishing this, like, and getting it
Right.
across the goal line. I The recruiting got them inside the five, but it's always going to be that extra push from you're like the opposing defensive line is Tennessee's NIL, and you got the Ohio State offensive line is the NIL, and it's just like, all right, we'll see. And while they will tell you that that's not really the focus of DGG or his family, it's still something that you have to consider. And if you don't, then I guess maybe you're not paying attention, but they are, and he's going to be just fine wherever he ends up.
Yeah.
Um, quick question for you, because I know Monshon Sales, 5-star wide receiver, everybody loves him. I don't see it happening for Ohio State. I don't think they're going to be able to make that happen. I have no inside information. I'm just saying I don't expect another 5-star wide receiver in this class.
They're not even on the playing board for him. No. It's not even a thought. not even a thought in my mind that that's happening. No. And I feel the same way about Benny Easter, to be quite
Yeah.
honest. I know there's a lot of people who have tried to put some movement with the Benny Easter thing. I don't really, never saw it happening, and I see it, looking less and less likely. Though the fact that he went to Ole Miss, a lot of the people who were trying to sell Benny Easter to Ohio State are now saying, well, look, he just went and visited Ole Miss, so it shows that he's not happy with Texas Tech still. And to me, it looks exactly the same as it looked before, that they're maybe not intentionally, but they're going to get a bigger offer out of Texas Tech,
Mhm.
and they're going to smile and say guns up. And that's the way this is going to end.
Yeah, and when you see Ohio State competing
Which, by the
again,
way, Tone, just one thing,
yeah,
I don't think he's that good. I don't, Benny Easter, I don't think is that good anyway. So I'm not too concerned about that one.
uh, when it's Ohio State competing against a program like Ole Miss or programs like that, people get upset that Ohio State could be outbid by them, and I try to remind people that they don't have the overall roster costs that Ohio State does. They can pay a little bit more for this particular guy because 40% of their guys are making state minimum, that sort of thing, where
Mhm.
it's just like they don't have the overall talent level. And when you have the overall talent level, that means you have to have the overall, you're paying for them as well. And you've got more dips at a place like Ole Miss than or in other schools than you do at Ohio State, where you've got so many top tier guys and backups who other schools are trying to lure. I don't know how many backups at Texas Tech or Ole Miss are being offered starter money at other schools.
Definitely the retention cost at Ohio State, a ton higher. You can look at these, you know, a recruitment here, a recruitment there, and try to get yourself all bent out of shape. And I have done it a lot of times. But when we look in totality, there's a couple rosters that stand above the rest in college football, and the Buckeyes are right there. So it's working. It's working. We're now several years into it, and it's working. So there's no one or two individual things that are going to get me all worked up. Particularly a guy who's, if you commit to Texas Tech out of high school, right? If
Mhm.
that's your first pick, then your priorities are a little different than guys that generally commit to Ohio State. So like right off the rip there, it doesn't feel like it jives to me.
I often wonder if Micah Hudson had gone somewhere other than Texas Tech, if things would have been better for him, or if it's just not going to. It never would have worked out for him because he was a
Point.
guy that I really liked as a recruit. Reminded me of Garrett Wilson, and then you go to Texas Tech and you essentially disappear. But so you've said this is working out for Ohio State now. Will it work out in the future? And that's where we want to move now with the recruiting talk, because it's interesting. Ohio State got a commitment from a 2029 wide receiver, not just a 2029 receiver, maybe the 2029 receiver in Austin Miller. And I was thinking, if you're willing to accept a commitment from a 2029 kid and other 2029 kids want to start committing and you tell them, well, we're not ready for you, like there can be some backlash to that if you've got other kids that want to be a part of the class and Ohio State says, well, we're not quite ready. And through no fault of Ohio State's own, other than the fact that they've opened a door, but now they're like, hold on, just be careful. So I think one, that tells you how much they like Austin Miller. Two, they've got a good way of saying you'll get yours. We'll be, like if you want to commit right now, that's fine. But we need some time. We need to see your sophomore tape. Like we need more patience, I guess, in the game for some. I guess is probably what Ohio State is saying.
It is wild when we look back to back years. They took a kid just off his freshman year with Elijah Newman Hall and now Austin Miller. But boy, you got to be something special. I'm telling that kid, come here, son. I want to show you Austin Miller's tape right here. That's basically what I think I'd say. But really, this is the dilemma that Ohio State's been talking about for a while now with quarterback, when you need to have the pull the trigger after their sophomore year of film, and kind of how they're in this Brady situation where they've kind of changed what they're looking for out of a quarterback. And you signed him up as the guy 2 years before he was ever going to be on campus, and they want to push that to the normal time frame. And I actually think, as I'm looking forward, that we're starting to see a lot of schools try to hold off longer. When I look at this next class, the amount of quarterbacks that are committed at this point, far fewer than the previous year. It's almost like maybe they're colluding to try and say, let's all push this back a little bit because they all want more time. You know,
Mhm.
this all started because they were trying to beat each other earlier and earlier to get the guy. Now they're trying to have a truce and kind of push it back, maybe. Just a theory, but it's definitely noticeable that there are far fewer committed so early.
I had a high school player ask me recently, has a player ever committed to Ohio State before his freshman year? And I don't remember any. I know Danny Clark, I think, was after his freshman year, and again, that did not go well. A lot of these early commitments, it's just sometimes it's too early. You don't know what a player is going to do. You don't know how they're going to grow. Now, if they're 6'5", yeah, like that the size is going to be there. But I remember Tate Martell committed to Washington as an eighth grader, and I don't know that he grew another inch from that commitment.
I think you're
And of
right.
course, he flipped to Texas A&M, then eventually signed with Ohio State. But coaches don't want to be getting into the habit of offering or just accepting commitments. They'll offer what they need to offer, but accepting commitments, it's you've got to be really sure, especially now when you're looking at a place where some of these guys are going to want something for committing, or
Yeah.
like there's that. I wonder if one of the reasons the quarterbacks aren't committing as quickly as possible is because they know they can get money for visits. Like there's this whole now the different kind of
Hmm.
revenue stream going on.
The secondary market. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, for sure. You can
like
play it a lot of different ways, man.
yeah,
Committing early, that's what I'm saying. When we talk about Austin Miller, like committing early like this is not the way to make the most money. That's
mhm,
for sure. Which is why I'm impressed
mhm.
by him and I'm impressed by his family. And I don't know if everybody saw it today, but he put out a statement on Twitter thanking Buckeye Nation for the welcome. And I'd encourage you all to go look it up and listen to this 15-year-old speak because he sounds as mature as he looks on the football field, which is another promising sign that this ends up sticking and including we don't know if he doesn't reclassify and he isn't in next year's class.
Yeah,
I usually am anti reclassing,
mhm.
but this dude, yeah, whatever.
Now,
Of
yeah,
course, Tony, though, his dad might selfishly want him to stay on the high school team.
well, that's the other thing. Um, that's a good point. He's gonna. I was thinking like start sabotaging some transcripts or something like that, so that you you can't like no, you didn't graduate early. You missed an English class, something like that, to where it's not bad for the high school, but it's just not good enough for college. Um, a lot of parents would do that to keep their kids around a little bit longer. The 5 for 5 thing that has been approved, I'm interested to see what that does down the road in terms of recruiting. We were talking a little bit before the show, and this to me is only good for a few positions like offensive line, defensive line, tight end, and then maybe in the transfer portal getting an extra year out of somebody where like somebody's transferring as a senior or whatever, you'll get them and then you'll get them for another year after that. Like for Ohio State, this is almost more beneficial in terms of the portal because players can develop longer somewhere else, and then when they're ready to hit, then they can play their fifth year at Ohio State or fourth or fifth year at Ohio State. But for the skill positions, it's a tough ask to have a fifth year wide receiver that if you've already gotten something out of them in the third and fourth year and you know what they are, you've got to decide if you want to keep them around for a fifth year. And a lot of schools are going to be like, you can probably go on and we'll go with the next wave coming in.
Yeah, I think, like you said, like the positions where we see a ton of guys who are already end up fifth year guys, right? The positions that we assume red shirts for
Mm-hmm.
already. Those guys, it's going to be pretty much the same thing. The offensive and defensive linemen, we'll see plenty of, them taking advantage of the 5 for 5. But there's also the situation. with the skill players where, look, coaches' jobs are on the line. They are going to gravitate towards what is safe and what they can trust in most cases. And if you look at a guy who's been a wide receiver for you and he's started a year and a half for you and he's coming back for his 5th year and he's got a pretty high floor, but he's got a pretty low ceiling, but you're comfortable and you can trust him. And then you got a guy who's talented below him. And that guy ends up, in a lot of cases in this situation, I think maybe sitting on the bench an extra year or leaving because the coach wanted to go with the safe option or the loyal option to continue to play that guy. And that's a situation you don't want to be in at all. And you could look on this roster and maybe point to a few instances of that. But there are places where it would help maybe a whole lot. Like, you look at guys like Leroy Roker, a guy like that potentially getting a 5th year, or maybe even a Terry Moore, who it's maybe if it doesn't catch on as well as he expected this year, and he gets now an extra year with Earl Little gone. So certainly some advantageous spots, and definitely it's going to create some situations where you might want to tell a guy like a Brandon Innes, sorry, man, like it's been real, but year number 5, we're looking for a little more juice in this position. If you're okay taking a backseat role or being part of the depth and being a leader, that'd be great. But 90% of the snap load at slot receiver is going to be going to Phil Bell and Brock Boyd this year. Like, you know what I mean?
When you've got the high floor and the low ceiling, it creates tight windows and tight windows to throw into, and literally, figuratively. And so you've got to deal with that. I was talking with an NFL scout, and he was texting me, and he's like, "I don't like this at all," because for them, they're going to be scouting players that they don't know if they're going to be in the draft. They're going to be scouting seniors that, say you're a 4th round pick, like a KJ Hill or something like that, where I think he was a 7th round pick. But if you're in that 4 to 7 range and you're a very good college player, it might be worth it to bring that guy back and pay him the same or more than what he'd be getting as a 5th or 6th round pick. And so now you've got all of these scouts who are going to be scouting these players, wasting their time. And these guys are already grumpy. They're every single day of their lives. And so now they're scouting players that won't even be part of it. And they won't even look at freshmen or sophomores right now because they're going to be so overloaded with juniors, seniors, and 5th year seniors that I think there will be players where it's going to be worth it to Ohio State or others to be like, we'll bring him back. And that's something you've got to also keep in mind with recruiting. Like if you miss out on a receiver, then that incentivizes you to maybe like, we better bring, do we want to bring the guy that we know back? Do we want to go into the portal? So this is all tied together. It's not one or the other. It's not this. It's all part of the same circulatory system.
Yeah. And it honestly, it makes it so much more fun to talk about and to the breaking up college football roster construction down now. I think is probably my favorite part of the offseason is how they're putting together these teams. I wish we had the financial figures to kind of have the final piece to the puzzle so we knew what we were working with and could really get into it even more. But it's made it so much more interesting. It's also made it, if you're good, if you're savvy, you can really get an upper hand. And I think Ohio State has done better than almost everyone on their level when it comes to handling it and all these different aspects. They're just killing it, Tone. The roster's fantastic. There's been a few maybe errors or things that the fan base in general is irritated by here or there. And you'll always have those who will complain about everything and magnify the losses more than they are. But the roster's loaded this year. It's going to be loaded next year again. I'm feeling really nice.
I do wonder if with the 5 for 5, not all coaches want this. I wonder how head coaches feel about it because it is going to create some very uncomfortable situations, but that's what all the money's for, where you do want this recruit to play. You really don't want to tell the senior he's got to go, but I mean, they have those conversations with seniors that don't play where it's time for you to go. So these aren't unfamiliar conversations. It just means they're going to have more decisions to make. And it's, as we've talked about in other shows, Ryan Day, since he has taken over, has never had one season where the rules or the world is the same the next year. And so it's like there's always something changing. And I guess that's a good thing in terms of having him, because all he's ever known is chaos. So he's not one of these guys
Yeah.
set in his ways. So he's able to just ride the waves, and this is just the next thing. And it is what it is. And as he always says, we're not the only team that has to deal with it. So that's something that, as long as everybody else has the same problem, we'll figure out how to get through it. And I think that's good leadership.
Yeah, I agree. He's been fantastic throughout this period of just absolute chaos from year to year, pivoting in the organization. Everybody from Pantone and all through has done just a great job at then keeping the main thing once they get in the building, and keeping that all status quo and not letting all the stress and pressure of everything else kind of bleed in. The team always feels like it's got a great connection and definitely great chemistry. So they do a great job on all fronts.
This is the last thing I want to ask you in terms of the future of recruiting and NIL being what it is. Do you think development is less important than it's ever been because you can pay for players, or is it more important than it's ever been because you can't pay for every player?
I think probably as a whole, it's less important, but if you're good at it, you can get a much bigger
Mm.
advantage on everybody else, like Indiana, for instance.
Boy, the proof is in the pudding right there. If you can get the most out of your players, develop them, have great coaches, great coordinators, just really smart players that have talent, you can go a long way. Anything else before we go? We've covered a
No,
wide
buddy.
range of time.
We've covered a while. Oh, Blake Wong. Maybe one more. Blake Wong, as we record this show here Tuesday night, we'll drop it probably Wednesday morning.
Mhm.
And we've got the Blake Wong decision coming Saturday. And Blake Wong is, going to be down to just probably Ohio State and BYU come Saturday, in my estimation. I talked to Blake, and the allure of Ohio State and everything, and the reason that he wanted to go to Ohio State in the first place a year ago, and why he was a very public lean to Ohio State, is all still there. Of course, he is LDS, and that all ties in at BYU, and he believes in himself and that he can, be a star wide receiver wherever he goes. But there is this feels to me like this decision has not been made, and it's up in the air. And this is the first one we're going to see really where Cortez Hankton is like he can win this. I really believe he can win this, or he cannot. And I'm really looking forward to how this one shakes out. Not just that, but I
Mhm.
love Blake Wong as a prospect. So I'm really looking forward to that on Saturday. We'll be live over at Juck on Bucks for that at 5 p.m. on Saturday.
Yeah, so check that out. And of course, if you're watching YouTube on this one, it's the thumbs up would be great. Subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. Those of you who have, we appreciate that. There's a thing now, if you're watching on mobile devices, you can hype up a video. There's a like down by the comments, you can hit the hype
What?
button and
Hype us up.
hype send some hype our way. It helps us, helps the algorithm, lets other people find us. And if you're listening and you want to watch, you can find us over at youtube.com/at Buckeye Insiders. And if you want to go to BuckeyeInsiders.com right now, we've got a splash page there for you. Put your email address in. We will send you an update on how things are going. Hopefully not too much longer. We will have a full site for you. Looking forward to that. But that will do it from here. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later.